Hello, my name is Chloe Gibson, and I am a practicum student here at ASU Counseling Services. And today I am providing a brief presentation on perfectionism, and we'll go over what perfectionism is, um, what areas of life it might show up, um, the difference between healthy striving and unhealthy striving, and resources and skills that you can use to overcome perfectionism. So let's go ahead and get into it. So, what is perfectionism? I'm sure you've heard this before. Perfectionism is essentially setting high expectations or standards for yourself to validate your self worth, that you're good enough, that you're successful, all these different things. So, I have a video with Brene Brown and Oprah Winfrey. So, Brene Brown is a psychologist that studies shame, and she states that perfectionism is a function of shame. But I will go ahead and play this video for you. Right. So, one of the things that really stood out when Brene Brown was explaining perfectionism is her quote of, "If I look perfect, do it perfect, work perfect, and live perfect, I can avoid or minimize shame, blame, and judgment. And she mentions that perfectionism is almost like this 20-ton shield that you hold over yourself. Um, and that shield is the perfectionism, and it prevents any kind of criticism or ridicule. And it's more externally driven compared to healthy striving, which is more internally driven, of where you genuinely, you know, want to do your best, but you also give yourself grace for any kind of mistakes. Whereas perfectionism, you don't. And, that shield can get really heavy and very overwhelming. Um, and so we'll go ahead and talk about where perfectionism might come up in life. So, one example is maybe at work you're making sure tasks are done just right. Your work has to be perfect. And this might be driven by you don't want your coworkers or maybe your supervisor or boss to um, give you poor feedback on your work, maybe, um, which can lead to feelings of, oh, man, I got this criticism, so I'm not doing good enough. I shouldn't even have this job. I'm not even qualified. It can just lead to this spiraling type of thinking. Maybe as a student, you strive for A's at school and nothing less. And so that might be driven by maybe parental expectations that um, maybe they require A's for you to be seen as um, something to show off to people or something like that. Or maybe you just want to be seen as intelligent or um, someone that, or maybe it's just competitive. Maybe it's, I don't want to be last, maybe something like that. You can also see it maybe within athletics. So maybe you strive to be the best on a team. Sports like soccer, where it's a very collaborative sport, you might have set standards for yourself to never let your teammates down. Um, and so you work yourself to the bone to be the best on the team, because you don't want that criticism from your coach or complaints from your teammates, something like that. Um, Maybe obsessing over your appearance. So hair has to be just right, makeup has to be just right. Um, you wear a certain type of clothing or attire, and that can be driven by wanting to make good impressions all the time, wanting to be liked, wanting to be this social butterfly, um, wanting people to admire you, not dislike you, or something like this. Um, or engaging in restrictive dieting to obtain a desired physique. And that might go with obsessing over your appearance as well. So, um, will people not like me if I don't look a certain type of way or I don't have a certain type of body type? Something like that. So, cycle of perfectionism, it it's a way of thinking about things. And so, it's a function of shame and having that shield to protect yourself from criticism or ridicule. And so maybe an example would be um, a college athlete who is trying to achieve team captain and being the best on a team. So the athlete might think, I can't let my coach down, or I must not let my teammates down. There may be thinking of, if I make a mistake, then we won't go to state championship. If I make a mistake, then I'll be kicked off the team. If I make a mistake, then coach will bench me, something like that. Or if I fail, then I am a loser. Or if I fail, then I am not worthy of being on the team. If I fail, then I am not meant to be on the team. Anything like that. So when these thoughts come up, it can create emotions like fear of not being good enough, anxiousness. So, with perfectionism, you might constantly worry about things, constantly worried about making mistakes. You might have emotions of sadness or even depression, maybe, where you feel hopeless or worthless, maybe. Feelings of frustration when expectations or standards that you set aren't met. And so you might get angry with yourself. Um, and then with these thoughts and emotions, it can affect your behavior. So um, you might procrastinate because these can be so overwhelming with all the tasks that you place on yourself. All the expectations that you place on yourself can be really overwhelming, in which you can maybe lack motivation and procrastinate. You might avoid stressors altogether. Um, Obsessive compulsive behaviors. So having habits to um, avoid mistakes, things like that. Um, and all of this can be really exhausting and lead to lethargicness or fatigue. And so, with all this said, it just increases the cycle of self criticism and the need to set even higher standards for yourself. Um, because you might say, well, um, I'm not meeting my goals to be team captain, and so I need to set these even higher standards for myself um, to reach that goal. Okay. And there are avoidant emotion focused coping within perfectionism, so you might distract yourself a lot with a lot of um, tasks. Um, you'll blame yourself a lot, probably. Um, Maybe withdraw, isolate yourself. Um, Maybe even substance abuse as a distractor. Denial that, um, or you don't want to believe that you're a human who makes mistakes. And venting, which venting can be very cathartic, can release a lot of emotions. But if you don't have problem focused coping skills where you um, make plans for yourself to overcome perfectionism, venting can only do so much. Um, it'll just continue that ruminating cycle. So, like Brene Brown said, there is adaptive perfectionism, or what she calls healthy striving. And that is where you concentrate more so on the things that you have achieved, things that you have done well, and give yourself grace for the things that you made mistakes on or something like that. Whereas with someone with unhealthy striving, focuses more so on the things that didn't go well, the things that you should have done, could have done, would have done. Um, and so healthy striving is just um, giving yourself more grace for the mistakes, whereas unhealthy striving is um, I have to do this thing, and if that doesn't happen, um, then I am a loser, all these other things. So, how do we reduce perfectionistic thinking? And one of the ways that you can do that is challenging your thinking. So, identifying those unhelpful thoughts. So, maybe the shoulda, coulda, woulda's, or if you're catastrophizing things, maybe that black and white thinking, um, where it's either good or bad, or maybe you're mind reading, um, which is where you have thoughts of, um, oh, well, I didn't pass this exam, so my professor probably thinks that I'm lazy and unintelligent. And that's an example of you mind reading what the professor might be thinking when he or she might not actually be thinking that. So identifying those unhelpful thoughts and question the validity of the thought. So maybe you think, um, if I get negative feedback on a work assignment, maybe from supervisor or boss or something like that, I might think, oh, man, I got this criticism, and so I bet my boss like thinks that I'm not qualified for this job, or um, I'm not competent enough, and really question the validity of these thoughts. So, how valid is it that you're actually incompetent? Think of experiences where you did something well, you were competent. Um, so, always question the validity of those unhelpful thoughts, and then recognize the emotional and behavioral consequences that come from these thoughts. So you might recognize that you feel frustrated with yourself because you didn't meet an expectation. And so with that you might lash out, or you might engage in self-blame, withdrawal, something like that. And then develop alternative or countering thoughts, um, to these unhelpful thoughts. So, for example, I had an unhelpful thought that um, if I don't make team captain, then I am a loser and I should just leave the team. Um, so when you develop alternative thoughts, I might say to myself instead, yes, I didn't make team captain, but um, next time I'll just have to train more. Um, I did my best. And really engage in that positive negative banter between yourself. Um, and it's easier said than done, but it takes practice. And so you'll want to practice engaging in that positive and negative self talk to change the way you're thinking, which will ultimately um, change the way you're feeling and your behaviors as well. Some alternative things that you can do as well is evaluate the things that you can control and the things that you can let go of. So you might do this by drawing two circles, and in the inner circle, write down things that you can control in life. And then in the outer circle, write down things that you can't control in life. And once you've done those two things, circle within the outer circle the items that you couldn't control but tried to control. And then write down whether or not a negative or positive outcome came from it. Typically, it's a more negative outcome. When we try to control things that we can't control, it leads to frustration and anxiousness, shame, all those things. And really look at this circle of the things that you can control, things that you can't, and analyze the things that you're willing to let go. And this can be really hard, but really challenge yourself to consider, okay, this is something I can't control. I've tried to control it before and it didn't really go well. Is this something that I can let go of? You can also create small steps to reach a goal, but also allow grace for yourself to make mistakes. So let's say, again, with the example of making team captain, you might set small steps like I'll practice for an hour on Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Or I will do strength training at the gym 3 times a day, 3 times a week. And then allowing yourself to forgive when you don't meet these goals. So maybe you didn't exercise for 3 times a week. And letting yourself be okay with not meeting that standard. And one way that you can do this is write a forgiveness journal. So within a notebook or a piece of paper, write down the things that you blame yourself for, that you're criticizing yourself for, and write down how you can forgive yourself for that. So with the team captain example again, maybe I didn't go to the gym 3 times that week. Maybe I only went 2 times. Within my journal, I might say, I didn't go to the gym 3 times this week. It was only 2, but I forgive myself for this because I needed to take time to prioritize my mental health. And next week, I'll try again. Something like that. And then also try to limit your time on social media. Social media is very difficult nowadays to take our eyes away from. And with someone who has perfectionistic thinking, this sets yourself up for comparison. And it's important to recognize within social media too that most of the posts on there are highlight reels. They're highlights of someone's life. So all their achievements, big events like weddings, graduations, big trips, things like that. And it's really easy to fall into that trap of comparing yourself to the posts of a friend or something and thinking, oh man, well, I need to start doing all these different things so I can be just as successful as them. So it's important to limit your time on social media, give yourself a break to avoid getting into that trap. But I have additional resources that I can link in the description below. If if you're interested in checking them out. But this link takes you to a document and it talks about things that we covered today, like what perfectionism is, how to challenge thinking, coping with perfectionistic emotions, all those different things. And then I have a link to a podcast by Brene Brown, and it's called Unlocking Us with Brene Brown. And there's about 6 episodes that talks about getting more comfortable with imperfection. And then this link takes you to another YouTube video of Zena Imam, and she is a high school student, and she talks about her own journey of overcoming her insecurities and perfectionism. But other than that, this is all I have for the presentation on perfectionism. I hope it was helpful for you, and I wish you the best of luck in overcoming perfectionism if you struggle with that. But thanks for watching.